I'm not a contract for you to sign.
No, you're an investment I expect returns on.
You can't be serious, Dad. Amara's voice echoed through the modest living room of her family home. The cup of tea she'd been holding clattered onto the saucer, spilling amber liquid across the worn tablecloth. Her father wouldn't meet her eyes. It's already arranged, Amara. The papers have been signed. So you sold me? She stood up, her tall, slender frame vibrating with fury. Like some business transaction? That's not fair. Her father's voice cracked. For the first time, Amara noticed the deep lines around his eyes, the gray that had overtaken his once black hair. The bank is taking everything, the house, the shop, everything your mother built before she died. Amara felt her chest tighten. Her mother's fabric shop had been their lifeline, the place where she'd first learned to design, to transform raw materials into beauty. And this man, this James Carter, he'll make all our problems disappear if I just marry him? The word felt bitter on her tongue. Her father nodded slowly. He needs a wife for appearances, someone beautiful, accomplished. He chose you after seeing your work at the Emerging Designer Showcase. No, my talent wasn't enough for him to invest in my fashion line, but it's enough to make me suitable arm candy. Amara laughed bitterly, tears stinging her eyes. You have 1 week to prepare. The wedding is next Saturday. 1 week to mourn her freedom, her dreams, her right to fall in love on her own terms. The Carter mansion loomed before her like a fortress as the car pulled through wrought-iron gates. Mara's hands smoothed over her cream dress, a simple sheath she'd designed and sewn herself. If she was going to be inspected like merchandise, she'd at least wear her own creation. Miss Thompson, a stern housekeeper greeted her at the door. Mr. Carter is waiting in the study. Amara followed, head high, heart pounding. The house was all sleek lines and cold marble, lacking warmth despite its obvious wealth. The study door swung open to reveal a man standing with his back to her, staring out floor-to-ceiling windows. Even from behind, James Carter commanded attention. Broad shoulders beneath a perfectly tailored suit, dark hair cropped close at the sides. Your fiancé has arrived, sir, the housekeeper announced before disappearing. He turned, and Amara felt an unwelcome jolt of attraction. James Carter was devastatingly handsome, sharp jawline, piercing green eyes, and full lips currently pressed into a thin line of assessment. Those eyes traveled from her face down her body, not with desire, but with cool evaluation that made her skin crawl. Amara Thompson? His voice was deep, smooth, like expensive whiskey. You'll do nicely. Fire rushed through her veins. I'm not a dress you're purchasing, Mr. Carter. A flicker of surprise crossed his face, quickly replaced by amusement. No? Then what would you call this arrangement? Extortion. She stepped further into the room. You're taking advantage of my family's financial situation to get what you want. He moved toward her, circling slowly like a predator, and yet here you are, accepting the terms for my family, not for you. She refused to shrink under his gaze. Let's be clear about expectations, James said, stopping directly in front of her. This is a business arrangement. I need a wife who looks good in photographs, can handle herself at social functions, and won't embarrass me. In return, your family's debts disappear, and you get to live in luxury while continuing your little fashion hobby. My fashion career, she corrected sharply. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. You'll have an allowance for that. Consider it an investment. How generous of you to invest in your property, her voice dripped with sarcasm. In one swift movement, James was inches from her face. Don't mistake this for generosity, Amara. I chose you because you're beautiful enough to be convincing and desperate enough to agree. Nothing more. His proximity sent unwanted heat through her body. She could smell his cologne, sandalwood, and something uniquely him, and see the faint shadow of stubble along his jaw. You don't know the first thing about me, she breathed. I know enough. His eyes dropped briefly to her lips. The wedding is Saturday. My assistant will handle all arrangements. You'll move in immediately after. And if I refuse? His smile was cold. Then your father loses everything. Your choice. No choice at all. The wedding day arrived with cruel efficiency. Amara stood in a designer gown she hadn't chosen, surrounded by flowers she hadn't picked, about to marry a man she could barely tolerate. The ceremony was small but exclusive. attended by New York's elite, none of whom she knew. Her father walked her down the aisle, his hand trembling on hers. "I'm so sorry, Starlight," he whispered, using her childhood nickname that almost broke her composure. "It's okay, Dad," she lied, squeezing his hand. "I'm choosing this." James waited at the altar, devastatingly handsome in his tuxedo, wearing the practiced smile of a man accustomed to getting exactly what he wanted. But as her father placed her hand in his, she noticed something flicker across James's face, surprise perhaps at the electricity that passed between them at the simple touch. The vows were traditional. Amara spoke each word clearly, while silently vowing that she would never give this man her heart, no matter what legal claim he had on her life. "The rings," the officiant prompted. James's fingers were warm as he slid the platinum band onto her finger. When their eyes met, something shifted. For the briefest moment, vulnerability replaced calculation in his gaze. "You may kiss the bride." Amara braced herself for a perfunctory peck, something for appearance's sake. Instead, James's hand came to rest gently on her waist, pulling her slightly closer. His eyes asked a question she couldn't decipher before his lips descended on hers. What should have been brief ignited into something else entirely. His lips were soft but demanding, and when they parted slightly against hers, her body responded before her mind could intervene. Her hand moved unconsciously to his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath expensive fabric. When they broke apart, both were breathing harder than the simple kiss should have warranted. Confusion and irritation warred in James's expression, as if his body had betrayed his carefully constructed plans. Cameras flashed, capturing their stunned expressions for posterity. "Smile, wife," he murmured against her ear, his breath sending an unwelcome shiver down her spine. "We have appearances to maintain." The reception passed in a blur of unfamiliar faces and forced smiles. James kept her by his side, one hand possessively at the small of her back as he introduced her to business associates who clearly knew nothing of the arrangement. "You play your part well," she whispered during their first dance. His hand warmed through the thin material of her gown. "I always meet the terms of my contracts," he replied, expertly guiding her across the floor. "And so will you." His hand tightened slightly at her waist, drawing her closer than necessary. Their bodies moved in perfect synchronicity, despite the tension between them. "What exactly do you get out of this arrangement, James? Surely a man like you could find a willing wife without resorting to financial coercion." Something dark crossed his face. "My reasons are my business. Your job is to smile and look devoted." "Like this?" She offered her most dazzling smile, eyes cold. His gaze dropped to her lips, lingering there before meeting her eyes again. "That's convincing enough for everyone else, but I see exactly what you are." "And what's that?" The music slowed, and James pulled her flush against him, his lips at her ear. "A woman who hates that her body responds to mine, even when her mind objects." Amara stiffened in his arms, furious because he wasn't entirely wrong. There was an undeniable chemistry between them that complicated her perfect plan to keep him at emotional arm's length. "You flatter yourself," she managed, pulling back slightly to look him in the eye. "This is a transaction, remember? Nothing more?" His thumb traced small circles at the small of her back, sending unwanted heat through her body. "Then we understand each other perfectly." As the dance ended, he pressed another unexpected kiss to her lips, this one brief but searing, before leading her back to the head table. Hours later, as they prepared to leave the reception, her father hugged her tightly. "Are you sure about this, Starlight? We could find another way." Over his shoulder, she saw James watching them, his expression unreadable. "I'm sure, Dad. I'll be fine." She forced a smile. "He may have my name on paper, but that's all he'll ever have." But as James helped her into the waiting car that would take them to their home, his hand brushed against hers, and that same treacherous electricity sparked between them. "Welcome to your new life, Mrs. Carter," he said as the car pulled away. Amara gazed out the window, watching her old life recede in the distance. She'd entered a gilded cage of her own choosing, married to a man who saw her as an acquisition. What terrified her most wasn't James's coldness or her uncertain future. It was the unwelcome heat that flooded her body whenever he touched her, a weakness she couldn't afford if she was going to survive this arrangement with her heart intact. What she didn't see was James watching her reflection in the window, his own expression troubled by the unexpected response his body had to a woman who was supposed to be merely a convenient solution, not a complication. Chapter 2. Enemies under one roof. The Carter mansion felt even more imposing in darkness. Amara stood in the grand foyer, her single suitcase looking pitiful against the sweeping marble staircase. James had disappeared immediately after their arrival, leaving the stern housekeeper, Mrs. Harris, to get her settled. "Your room is this way, Mrs. Carter." The title felt like a brand on Amara's skin. She followed the older woman up the stairs through a maze of hallways adorned with expensive art that felt as cold as the man who owned them. "This will be your suite." Mrs. Harris opened double doors to reveal a space larger than her family's entire apartment. Cream walls, plush carpet, and a massive four-poster bed dominated the room. A separate sitting area held a small sofa and writing desk, while French doors led to a private balcony. "Your things have been unpacked," Mrs. Harris said, gesturing to the walk-in closet. "Though Mr. Carter mentioned you'd require additional wardrobe items appropriate for your new position. His stylist will contact you tomorrow." "Where is Mr. Carter's room?" Amara asked, trying to sound casual. The housekeeper's expression remained neutral. "Across the hall. Mr. Carter values his privacy. So, separate bedrooms." Amara couldn't decide if she was relieved or insulted. "Breakfast is at 7. Mr. Carter takes us in the sunroom." With that, the housekeeper left, closing the doors firmly behind her. Amara sank onto the bed, finally alone with her thoughts. She'd survived the wedding, maintained her dignity, and now just had to navigate living with a stranger who owned her on paper. A knock interrupted her thoughts. James stood in the doorway, changed from his tuxedo into dark jeans and a fitted gray sweater that made him look almost approachable. "Almost. I trust the accommodations are acceptable." His voice was cool, professional. "The gilded cage is lovely," she replied, rising from the bed. Something like amusement flickered in his eyes. "There are papers on your desk. Account information, credit cards, household staff schedules. You'll need to memorize security codes and protocols. Anything else, Warden?" James stepped into the room, closing the distance between them. "You agreed to this arrangement, Amara. Playing the victim doesn't suit you." "I'm adapting to my surroundings." She held her ground as he approached. "What exactly does being Mrs. Carter entail beyond looking decorative?" "You'll accompany me to social and business functions, support charitable causes of your choosing with my approval, maintain appearances of a happy marriage." His eyes traced her face. "The rest of your time is your own. And my design work? The third-floor east wing has a suitable space you can use as a studio. Equipment, materials, whatever you need will be provided." The unexpected generosity caught her off guard. "Thank you." James seemed equally surprised by her gratitude. An awkward silence stretched between them. "Sleep well, Amara?" He turned to leave. "That's it? No consummation of our business arrangement?" The words escaped before she could stop them. James froze, then turned slowly. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes that made her heart race. "Is that what you want?" His voice had dropped an octave. "I want to understand the terms," she replied, fighting to keep her voice steady. He moved toward her with deliberate steps until mere inches separated them. "The terms don't include my bed unless you're offering." Heat rushed through her body at his proximity. "I'm clarifying expectations, not making offers." "Then let me be clear." His hand came up to tilt her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. "I don't force women into my bed. No matter what you think of me, this marriage exists on paper and in public. Behind closed doors, we lead separate lives." His touch burned against her skin. Despite her anger, her body betrayed her with a slight lean toward him. James noticed. His eyes darkened as they dropped to her lips. For a breathless moment, she thought he might kiss her again. Instead, he abruptly released her and stepped back. "Good night, wife." The door closed behind him with quiet finality. 3 days passed in awkward coexistence. James left early each morning and returned late, while Amara explored the mansion and began sketching new designs. On the 4th day, she discovered the unused sunroom on the west wing, a perfect space for creating with its abundant natural light. Without asking permission, she commandeered it, moving in her sketches and fabric samples, setting up her sewing machine on an antique table. 2 days later, she was deep in concentration, pins between her lips as she adjusted a delicate piece of silk, when the temperature in the room seemed to drop suddenly. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" James stood in the doorway, his expression thunderous. She hadn't heard him return home. Amara removed the pins from her mouth calmly. "Working?" In my grandmother's sunroom? It wasn't a question, but an accusation. I didn't realize rooms in this house came with ownership labels, she continued, pinning the fabric. James stalked toward her, radiating fury. This room is off limits. You should have specified that when listing all your rules. She stood her ground, needle in hand. You've moved her furniture, rearranged everything. I've improved it, Amara interrupted. This room was gathering dust. Now it has purpose. Something flashed in James's eyes. Pain, quickly masked by anger. You don't get to decide the purpose of rooms in my house. Our house, according to the marriage certificate you were so eager to obtain. James stepped closer, invading her space. This room stays as it was. Why? What could possibly matter about this particular sunroom when you have 3 others? Because it was hers. The words exploded from him. My grandmother spent her final years in this room. She taught me to read here, to play chess. It's the last place I have of her. The raw emotion in his voice stunned Amara into silence. This was the first genuine feeling she'd seen from him. I didn't know, she said quietly. Because you didn't ask. You just took what you wanted, like everything else in this house is at your disposal. The unfairness of his accusation sparked her own temper. What was I supposed to do? You've barely spoken 3 words to me since the wedding. You disappear all day and night. I'm trapped in this mausoleum you call a home, trying to carve out some space for myself. They were inches apart now, both breathing hard from their argument. You have an entire wing. I have nothing here. Her voice broke slightly. Nothing that's mine, nothing familiar. Even my body apparently belongs to you on paper. But you can't be bothered to... She caught herself too late. James's expression changed, his anger transforming into something more dangerous. Can't be bothered to what, Amara? Heat rushed to her face. Nothing, forget it. No. His hand caught her wrist when she tried to turn away. Finish what you were saying. The gentle pressure of his fingers against her pulse point sent unwanted heat spiraling through her body. Let go of me. Not until you admit what you're really angry about. His voice had dropped to a husky whisper. Is it that I haven't touched you since our wedding day? You're delusional. But she couldn't meet his eyes. James stepped closer, his chest nearly touching hers. Am I? Should I remind you how your body responded when I kissed you? How you leaned into me that night in your bedroom? That was chemistry, he finished. The one thing in this arrangement neither of us anticipated. His free hand came up to brush a strand of hair from her face, the gentle touch at odds with the intensity in his eyes. I don't want you, she whispered, finally admitting the truth. The feeling is mutual. His eyes dropped to her lips, and for one suspended moment, Amara thought he would close the distance between them. Instead, she pulled her hand from his grasp and slapped him hard across the face. The sound echoed in the quiet room. James didn't flinch, but his eyes darkened dangerously. I'm not one of your possessions, she said, her voice shaking with emotion. I won't let you use my body's response against me. She expected anger, even retribution. Instead, James took a deliberate step back. I'll have your things moved to the proper studio by morning, he said, his voice controlled once more. Don't enter this room again. He turned to leave, then paused at the doorway. And Amara, next time you want me to touch you, just ask. Don't start an argument to create an excuse for proximity. The door closed behind him with quiet finality, leaving Amara alone with her anger, confusion, and the undeniable heat still coursing through her veins. That night, a storm raged outside the mansion. Amara lay awake, replaying their confrontation, hating how her body had responded to his closeness despite her mind's objections. A strangled cry from across the hall cut through her thoughts. She hesitated only briefly before slipping from her bed and crossing to James's door. When another pained sound came from within, she pushed it open without knocking. The massive room was illuminated only by flashes of lightning. James thrashed on the bed, caught in what was clearly a violent nightmare. No, please, don't take her too. The broken plea tugged at something in Amara's chest. She approached cautiously. James, wake up. When he didn't respond, she reached out to touch his shoulder. In an instant, his hand shot out, gripping her wrist as he bolted upright. His eyes were wild, unseeing. It's me, she said softly. Recognition dawned slowly. His grip loosened, but didn't release entirely. You were having a nightmare, she explained, unsure why she felt compelled to comfort this man who had essentially purchased her. James ran his free hand over his face. "I'm fine. Clearly," she said dryly. A particularly violent crack of thunder made her jump slightly. James's expression changed as he studied her. "You're afraid of storms?" It wasn't a question. "I'm not." Another thunderclap interrupted her denial, causing her to tense involuntarily. James surprised her by shifting over in the bed, making space beside him. "Stay." "What?" "Until the storm passes." His voice was gruff, but lacked its usual coldness. Against her better judgment, Amara sat on the edge of the bed. Another flash of lightning illuminated James's face, vulnerable in a way she'd never seen before. "Who were you dreaming about?" she asked quietly. She expected him to dismiss the question, but the darkness seemed to offer a strange intimacy between these two people who were strangers despite their marriage. "My mother," he said finally. "She died when I was 12, during a storm like this." Amara felt an unexpected pang of sympathy. "I lost my mother too. Cancer 4 years ago." James's hand found hers in the darkness, a simple human connection that felt more intimate than any kiss. They sat in silence as the storm continued outside, two broken people finding unexpected comfort in each other's presence. When Amara's eyes grew heavy, James gently pulled her down beside him. She should have resisted, should have returned to her own room. Instead, she allowed herself to be cradled against his chest, his steady heartbeat lulling her toward sleep. "This changes nothing," she murmured, fighting the comfort she felt in his arms. "Of course not," he agreed, his hand stroking soothingly up and down her spine. By morning, they would return to their careful distance, to the roles of reluctant wife and controlling husband. But for these few hours, as the storm raged outside, they found an unexpected peace in the simple act of holding and being held. Chapter 3. Public Pretense, Private Tension. "You need to be ready by 7, James announced, striding into Amara's studio without knocking. She looked up from her sketches, irritated by the interruption. Since the night of the storm 2 weeks ago, they'd carefully avoided any mention of the vulnerability they'd shown each other, reverting to cool politeness. "Ready for what?" "The Lawson Foundation Gala." He checked his watch impatiently. "The most important charity event of the season." "And you're just telling me now?" Amara set down her pencil. "It's already 5. Your dress is in your closet. Hair and makeup will arrive shortly." He turned to leave, then paused. "Wear the emeralds from the safe. They'll match the dress." "I'm not your doll to dress up," she called after him. James glanced back, his eyes traveling down her body in a way that made her skin heat. "No, you're my wife, and tonight you'll look the part." The door closed behind him, leaving Amara seething. The dress was admittedly stunning. Emerald green silk that shimmered like a forest at dusk, cut to accentuate every curve of her body. The emerald and diamond necklace nestled against her collarbone, worth more than her father's house. Amara studied her reflection critically. The stylist had done wonders with her hair, arranging her natural curls in an elegant updo, with a few tendrils framing her face. Her makeup was flawless, highlighting her deep brown eyes and full lips. She looked like she belonged in James's world. The thought was unsettling. She was fastening the second earring when James appeared in her doorway. His sharp intake of breath made her turn. For once, his carefully controlled expression faltered. His eyes darkened as they traveled over her, lingering on the exposed skin of her shoulders, the curve of her waist, the slit that revealed a glimpse of her leg. "You look—" He cleared his throat. "Appropriate." Amara raised an eyebrow, emboldened by his reaction. "Just appropriate?" James stepped into the room, towering over her in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. "You know exactly how you look," she did, and for the first time since their arrangement began, she felt a flicker of power. "The car is waiting." He offered his arm stiffly. Amara took it, feeling the solid muscle beneath the expensive fabric. "Lead the way, husband." The Lawson Foundation Gala was held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, transformed for the evening into a wonderland of lights and flowers. As they ascended the grand staircase, all eyes turned to them. New York's most intriguing new power couple. "Smile," James murmured, his hand possessive at the small of her back. "They're all wondering how I managed to land someone so far out of my league." The unexpected compliment caught her off guard. Before she could respond, they were surrounded by New York's elite, all eager to meet the mysterious new Mrs. Carter. "James, darling." A statuesque blonde air-kissed him before turning, assessing eyes on Amara. "So this is the bride who swept you off your feet. We were all shocked by your sudden wedding." "Sophia," James nodded coolly. "My wife. Amara." "Amara. Sophia Lee, my former business partner." The emphasis on former was subtle but unmistakable. Sophia's smile tightened slightly. "Charmed." Sophia's eyes swept over Amara with thinly veiled disapproval. "What exactly do you do, dear?" "I'm a fashion designer," Amara replied, holding the woman's gaze steadily. Sophia laughed lightly. "How quaint! I meant, what did you do before marrying into the Carter fortune?" James's arm tightened around Amara's waist. "My wife graduated at the top of her class from Parsons and had her designs featured in Vogue before she was 26. "Excuse us, Sophia. I see the mayor waiting." As he guided her away, Amara whispered, "I didn't know you knew anything about my career." "I know everything about you," his reply was matter-of-fact. "I never enter any arrangement without thorough research." The evening progressed in a blur of introductions and small talk. James remained at her side, his hand rarely leaving the small of her back, his touch burning through the thin silk of her gown. It was all for show, she reminded herself. The possessive touches, the proud introductions, the way his eyes kept finding hers across the room, all carefully choreographed to sell their marriage as something real. Then came the dancing. The orchestra struck up a waltz, and James led her to the center of the floor. His hand settled at her waist, the other taking hers with surprising gentleness. "Follow my lead," he murmured, pulling her closer than strictly necessary. "I know how to dance," she replied, but allowed him to guide her through the first few steps. They moved together with unexpected harmony, as if their bodies recognized something their minds refused to acknowledge. Amara was acutely aware of every point of contact between them, his hand at her waist, his chest occasionally brushing against hers, his breath warm against her temple. "Everyone's watching us," she whispered. "Let them watch." His voice was low, intimate. "They're all envious of our perfect marriage." The sarcasm in her tone was undermined by the slight catch in her breath as he executed a turn that pressed her more firmly against him. "Of me." His eyes captured hers, suddenly intense. "For having the most beautiful woman in the room in my arms." The sincerity in his voice startled her. This wasn't the cool businessman who had purchased a wife for appearance's sake. This was something else, something that made her heart race and her skin flush. "You don't need to pretend when no one can hear us," she said, trying to break whatever spell was building between them. James's hand tightened slightly at her waist. "Who's pretending?" The music swelled, and he spun her in a series of turns that left her breathless and disoriented. When she returned to his arms, he held her closer still, their faces mere inches apart. For a suspended moment, Amara thought he might kiss her there, on the dance floor, in front of all of New York society. Part of her, a part she was increasingly unable to ignore, wanted him to. Instead, the music ended, and James stepped back, though his eyes remained locked on hers. The applause of the crowd broke whatever tension had built between them. "I need some air," she said, suddenly feeling suffocated by emotions she couldn't name. James nodded, leading her toward the terrace with a hand at the small of her back. The cool night air was a relief against her heated skin. They stood in silence, looking out over the city lights. Amara was achingly aware of James beside her, his profile illuminated by the soft glow from the ballroom. "You've surprised them all tonight," he said finally. "They expected a trophy wife. Instead, they got a woman with intelligence and poise who outshines everyone in the room, including your former partner." She couldn't help asking, "Sophia seemed possessive?" Something darkened in James's expression. "Sophia and I have history, business only." "She doesn't seem to think so." "Are you jealous, wife?" A hint of his familiar arrogance returned. "Curious," Amara corrected. "About the man I'm married to." James turned to face her fully, his expression unreadable. "What do you want to know?" The question hung between them, loaded with possibilities. Before Amara could respond, a voice interrupted their moment. "Mrs. Carter, I've been dying to meet you all evening." The man who approached was handsome in a practiced way. Perfect teeth, carefully styled hair, eyes that assessed her like merchandise. Edward Kingston. He took her hand before she could offer it, holding it longer than necessary. I'm on the board with your husband. James's entire demeanor changed, his body tensing beside her. Kingston, you've been keeping your bride all to yourself, Carter. Edward's eyes traveled down Amara's body appreciatively. Now I see why. My wife and I were just leaving, James said coldly. Not before I get a dance. Edward turned to Amara with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Surely your husband can spare you for one song. Before James could object, social etiquette forced his hand. With obvious reluctance, he stepped back. Home dance. Edward led Amara back to the dance floor, his hand positioned lower on her back than propriety allowed. As they began to move to the music, he pulled her uncomfortably close. You're wasted on Carter, he murmured near her ear. He's all work, no play. My husband works hard for a reason, Amara replied coolly, trying to increase the distance between them. Edward tightened his hold. I could show you what you're missing. Carter would never know. His hand slid lower, grazing the top of her hip. Amara stiffened. Remove your hand, Mr. Kingston. Don't be like that, sweetheart. We both know your marriage is... He never finished the sentence. James appeared beside them, his expression thunderous. The dance is over. His voice was deadly quiet. Edward smirked. We've barely started. I said it's over. James physically separated them, placing himself between Amara and Edward. Touch my wife again, and our business relationship won't be the only thing that ends tonight. The threat hung in the air, unmistakable. Edward held up his hands in mock surrender. No need for dramatics, just being friendly. Be friendly elsewhere. James took Amara's arm, guiding her firmly away from the dance floor and toward the exit. His silent fury was palpable as they waited for the car, his jaw clenched tight, his hand possessive on her elbow. James, not here, he cut her off. The ride home was charged with tension. James sat rigidly beside her, staring straight ahead, his knuckles white where his hands were clenched on his knees. It wasn't until they passed through the gates of the mansion that he finally spoke. Did he hurt you? The question surprised her. No. What did he say to you? Amara hesitated. Nothing worth repeating. James turned to her then, his eyes dark with an emotion she couldn't name. Tell me. He suggested I was wasted on you, that he could show me what I was missing. She met his gaze steadily. That you would never know. Something dangerous flashed in James's eyes. The car rolled to a stop at the front entrance, but neither moved to exit. And what did you say? His voice was low, controlled, but with an underlying tension that made her pulse quicken. I defended you. The admission felt more intimate than it should have. Then he put his hand where it didn't belong, and you appeared. James's eyes dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. The air between them seemed to thicken. No one touches what's mine, he said, his voice rough with possession. Before she could remind him that she wasn't actually his, not in the way he was implying, James closed the distance between them. His lips claimed hers with an intensity that stole her breath. This was nothing like their wedding kiss. This was raw, demanding, fueled by something darker than mere attraction. Against her better judgment, Amara responded, her hands coming up to grip the lapels of his jacket, pulling him closer rather than pushing him away. James growled his approval, deepening the kiss as his hand slid to her waist, then lower, tracing the curve of her hip through the silk of her gown. The door of the car opened suddenly, startling them apart. The driver stood discreetly looking away, holding the door. Reality crashed back. Amara touched her swollen lips, shocked by her own response. James exited first, then offered his hand to help her from the car. His eyes were still dark with desire, his breathing as uneven as hers. They entered the house in silence, the air between them charged with unresolved tension. At the base of the staircase, Amara paused, turning to face him. What was that? James's expression was guarded once more. A momentary lapse in judgment. The words stung more than they should have. Of course, heaven forbid you forget this is just a business arrangement. She turned to ascend the stairs, but James caught her wrist, pulling her back to face him. Don't twist my words, he said, his voice low and intense. You know what's between us isn't simple. What's between us is a legal document, an unwanted chemistry, she replied. though her body betrayed her with its response to his proximity. James's thumb traced circles on the inside of her wrist, sending shivers up her arm. Is it really so unwanted? The question hung between them, a dangerous invitation. Amara knew she should pull away, retreat to the safety of her room and the clarity of their original arrangement. Instead, she found herself swaying toward him, drawn by something she couldn't name or resist. It complicates things, she whispered. Yes. His free hand came up to trace the line of her jaw. It does. This time, when his lips met hers, the kiss was slower, deeper, an exploration rather than a claiming. His tongue traced the seam of her lips, seeking entry that she willingly granted. Amara's arms wound around his neck as the kiss intensified, her body pressing against the hard planes of his chest. James's hands slid down to her waist, then lower, fitting her more firmly against him. A small moan escaped her as she felt the evidence of his desire pressing against her. The sound seemed to break whatever remaining control James had. In one fluid movement, he lifted her, her legs instinctively wrapping around his waist as he carried her up the stairs, their lips never parting. At the top of the staircase, reality intervened. Amara pulled back slightly, her breathing ragged. Wait, she whispered against his lips. We can't. James stilled immediately, though his arms remained tight around her. Can't what? This isn't part of our arrangement. She struggled to think clearly with his body pressed against hers. We agreed arrangements can be renegotiated. His voice was rough with desire. Tell me you don't want this, and I'll set you down right now. The challenge hung between them. Amara knew she should say exactly that she didn't want him, that their marriage existed on paper only, but the lie wouldn't come. I don't want to be just another possession you claim when your pride is wounded, she said instead, her honesty surprising them both. James's expression softened slightly. He set her down gently, though his hands remained at her waist. Is that what you think this is about? Pride? Isn't it? Kingston made a play for your property, and now you're asserting ownership. Something flickered in his eyes, hurt, quickly masked by his usual control. You believe me capable of that? The question made her hesitate. After their night during the storm, after seeing his vulnerability, could she still believe he was that cold? I don't know what to believe anymore, she admitted. This wasn't supposed to happen. James took a step back, his expression closing off. You're right. A momentary weakness, nothing more? The distance he put between them felt greater than the physical step back. Amara found herself wanting to bridge it, to recapture the connection they'd shared moments before. Instead, she straightened her spine and nodded coolly. Good night, James. She turned and walked to her room without looking back, though she felt his eyes on her until her door closed between them. Only then did she allow herself to touch her swollen lips, to acknowledge the ache of unfulfilled desire that throbbed through her body. This game they were playing had just become infinitely more dangerous because, despite her words, despite her determination to keep her heart protected, her body had made its choice clear tonight. And that choice was James. Chapter 4. Unexpected Vulnerability. 3 days of careful avoidance followed the night of the gala. James left before dawn each morning and returned well after Amara had retreated to her room. She threw herself into her designs, grateful for the distraction from thoughts of his hands on her body, his lips against hers. The shrill ring of her phone broke her concentration. An unknown number. Hello, is this Mrs. Carter? The woman's voice was strained, professional. Yes, this is Amara Carter. The name still felt foreign on her tongue. I'm calling from Memorial Hospital. Your husband asked that we contact you. His grandmother has been admitted. Amara's heart stuttered. Is she all right? Stable, but we'd prefer family, present. Mr. Carter requested you come. James had asked for her. I'll be there right away. The hospital corridors were a maze of sterile white. Amara followed a nurse to the private room where an elegant elderly woman lay connected to monitors, looking fragile against the stark sheets. James sat beside the bed, his back to the door, shoulders hunched in a posture she'd never seen from him before. His hand engulfed his grandmother's smaller one with gentle care. Don't you dare leave me, Nana, he was saying softly. You're all I have left. The vulnerability in his voice made Amara's chest ache. She hesitated, suddenly feeling like an intruder. As if sensing her presence, James turned. The mask of control she'd grown accustomed to was gone, replaced by naked fear that made him look younger, more human. "You came!" Relief softened his features. "Of course." She moved to his side, surprised when he immediately reached for her hand, clutching it like a lifeline. "The doctors say it was a minor stroke. They're optimistic, but—" His voice broke slightly. Without thinking, Amara squeezed his hand. "She's going to be okay, James." His grandmother's eyes fluttered open then, confusion clearing as she focused on Amara. "So, you're the girl who finally caught my James." Her voice was weak but carried the same commanding presence James possessed. "Come closer. Let me see you properly." Amara approached the bed, still holding James's hand. "Beautiful," the older woman murmured. "But more importantly, kind eyes. You have kind eyes." "Nana, this is Amara, my wife," James said, a strange note in his voice when he said, "wife." "I know who she is, boy. I may be old, but I'm not senile." She patted the edge of the bed. "Sit, child. Tell me how you're managing with my impossible grandson." For the next hour, Amara found herself drawn into conversation with Margaret Carter, a formidable woman who'd raised James after his parents' death. Despite her frail condition, her mind was sharp, her wit sharper. "He was such a serious child," Margaret told Amara, ignoring James's protests. "Always trying to be the man of the house. I'd find him at 5 years old trying to balance checkbooks he couldn't even read." Amara glanced at James, seeing him in a new light. "That sounds like him." "He needs someone to remind him to live, not just work." Margaret's eyes were knowing. "Perhaps you're that someone." James cleared his throat. "Nana, the doctor said you need rest." Margaret rolled her eyes. "Bossy, isn't he? But he has a good heart. Remember that when he's being impossible." When the nurse came to administer medication, James and Amara stepped into the hallway. "Thank you for coming," he said, the words clearly unfamiliar on his tongue. "She likes you." "I like her too." Amara smiled. "She's nothing like I expected." "What did you expect? Someone colder, more like—" He hesitated. "More like me." Amara nodded. "She raised you after your parents died." "Since I was 10. Something dark crossed his face. "Car accident. Rainy night, slick roads." Understanding dawned. "This is a storm. That's why you have nightmares during storms." James stiffened, clearly uncomfortable with her perception. "We should get coffee. It's going to be a long night." As they walked toward the cafeteria, James hesitated, then spoke quietly. "It was just my parents in the accident. I'm an only child, or I thought I was." He glanced at Amara. "My father apparently had an affair. I only recently learned I may have a half-sister out there somewhere. I've hired investigators to find her." The revelation surprised Amara. This was the first truly personal information he'd volunteered without being pressed. "Is that why you mentioned having no siblings?" she asked gently. James nodded. "It's complicated and new. I'm still processing what it means for me, for my family legacy." This glimpse into his private thoughts felt significant, a small crack in the armor he wore so carefully. It was past midnight when they finally left the hospital, Margaret stable and sleeping peacefully. In the car, exhaustion hit Amara suddenly. "You didn't have to stay all night," James said, his voice gentle in the darkness. "Yes, I did." She turned to face him. "She's family now." Something shifted in James's expression. Surprise, followed by a warmth she'd never seen before. "She's almost all I have left," he said quietly. "My parents gone, the possibility of a half-sister I've never met. Just Nana." "And me," Amara said without thinking. "You have me too." The words hung between them, loaded with meaning neither was ready to examine. The rest of the drive passed in silence, but it was a different quality of silence than before. Not tense, but thoughtful. At home, James walked her to her door. "Thank you again for today." "You don't need to thank me." She hesitated, then asked the question that had been bothering her. "Why did you ask them to call me? You could have handled it alone." James looked away, then back at her, something vulnerable in his gaze. "Because I didn't want to be alone." The simple honesty of his answer caught her off guard. Before she could respond, he leaned forward and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead, not passionate like at the gala, but tender in a way that somehow felt more intimate. "Good night, Amara." He turned toward his own room. "James? Wait." The words escaped before she could reconsider. "Stay with me tonight." He froze, then turned slowly to face her. "Amara?" "Not for that," she clarified, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. "Just stay. After today, I don't think either of us should be alone." For a moment, she thought he would refuse. Then he nodded once, following her into her room. They undressed awkwardly, Amara slipping into the bathroom to change into a nightgown, James removing his suit down to his undershirt and boxers. When she emerged, he stood uncertainly beside the bed. "Which side do you prefer?" he asked formally, as if this were a business negotiation. The absurdity of the question made her smile. "Left." They settled under the covers with careful distance between them, both staring at the ceiling. Gradually, the events of the day caught up with them, and Amara felt her eyes grow heavy. "I was 10 when it happened," James said suddenly into the darkness. "The accident. It was my fault." Amara turned to face him. "How could it be your fault?" "I had a soccer game. They were coming to watch me. If I hadn't begged them to come, despite the storm forecast..." The pain in his voice made her reach across the space between them, finding his hand. "You were a child, James. It was an accident, not your fault." "That's what Nana always said. I never believed her." His fingers intertwined with hers. "I built my whole life trying to be worthy of their sacrifice. The business, the success, all of it to prove their death wasn't wasted on me." Amara moved closer, drawn by his pain. "Is that why you work so hard? Why you never rest?" "If I stop, I might have to feel it all. The guilt, the loss." His voice was barely audible. "It's easier to keep moving." Without words, Amara closed the remaining distance between them, resting her head on his chest. His arm came around her, holding her close as if she were something precious. "You're not alone anymore," she whispered against his skin. His only response was to tighten his arms around her, his cheek coming to rest against the top of her head. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other's arms. Not as husband and wife in the physical sense, but connected by something that felt dangerously close to understanding, to caring. In the morning, Amara awoke to find the space beside her empty but still warm. James had left for the hospital already, but a note rested on his pillow. "Thank you for last night, for seeing me. Jay." 4 simple words that somehow shifted the foundation of their carefully constructed arrangement. For the first time since their wedding, Amara wondered if there might be a man worth knowing beneath James's cold exterior. A man she could perhaps someday learn to love. Chapter 5. Distance makes the heart grow fonder. "I have to go to Shanghai," James announced 3 days after his grandmother returned home from the hospital. Amara looked up from her sketchbook, surprised by the stab of disappointment she felt. Since their night together, something had shifted between them. A tentative truce, perhaps even the beginnings of friendship. "For how long?" she asked, trying to sound casual. 2 weeks. James's eyes studied her face. "My grandmother has agreed to let you visit her while I'm gone. She seems quite taken with you." Amara smiled. "I like her too. She's nothing like you, thank God for that." His lips quirked in a rare display of humor. "She mentioned teaching you to make her famous lemon cake. Are you sure it's safe leaving us alone together? She has a lot of childhood stories about you." A genuine smile transformed James's face, making him look years younger. "I'm counting on your discretion, wife." The word didn't sound like a business term anymore. It carried warmth, almost affection. "When do you leave?" "Tomorrow morning." He hesitated, seeming uncharacteristically uncertain. "I was hoping you might have dinner with me tonight. We live in the same house. We have dinner together most nights." "Not here. There's a small French place in the village. I thought you might enjoy." Amara stared at him in surprise. "Are you asking me on a date, James Carter?" Pink tinged his cheekbones. "I suppose I am." The restaurant was exactly as he'd described, small, intimate, with no paparazzi or business associates to perform for, just 2 people sharing a meal by candlelight. James was different outside the mansion, more relaxed, almost playful. He told stories of business trips gone wrong, listened intently as she described her design inspirations, asked questions that showed genuine interest in her work. Over creme brulee, their hands brushed, reaching for the same spoon. Neither pulled away. "I've been thinking about our arrangement," James said, his fingers lightly tracing patterns on the back of her hand. Amara's heart skipped. "Oh? It's not working as planned?" "How so?" His eyes met hers, surprisingly vulnerable. I find myself thinking of you as more than a contractual obligation." The admission hung between them, fragile as spun glass. "Is that a problem?" she asked softly. "I don't know." He withdrew his hand slowly. Emotional entanglements weren't part of the plan. Amara felt a flicker of hurt at his clinical phrasing. "Nothing about us has gone according to plan, James." The drive home was quiet, both lost in thought about the dangerous territory they were entering. At the door to her bedroom, James paused. "I leave early tomorrow. I probably won't see you before I go." Amara nodded, unsure what she wanted to happen next. Part of her, a growing part, wanted him to kiss her, to stay. Another part feared what that would mean. James leaned down, pressing his lips gently to hers. Not demanding like at the gala, but questioning. Amara responded, her hand coming up to rest against his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palm. He pulled back first. "Good night, Amara." "Good night, James." She watched him walk to his own room, wondering when exactly the lines between arrangement and reality had begun to blur. The first week of James's absence passed quickly. Amara divided her time between her designs and visits to Margaret, who delighted in sharing stories of James's childhood. "He was always so serious," Margaret said as they shared tea in her sunroom, the original inspiration for the one in James. "After his parents died, he tried so hard to be the man of the house. I would find him reading business books at age 11. That explains a lot," Amara said, thinking of James's controlled demeanor. "Don't let his coldness fool you." Margaret's eyes were shrewd. "My grandson feels things deeply, too deeply, perhaps. He's learned to protect himself by shutting others out, even his wife." The question slipped out before Amara could stop it. "Especially his wife?" Margaret's expression softened. "Love makes us vulnerable, my dear, and James has lost everyone he's ever loved, except me." The words stayed with Amara long after she returned home. That night her phone chimed with a text, the first contact from James since he'd left. "How is Nana?" Amara smiled, typing back, "Determined to fatten me up with lemon cake and stories about you." His response came quickly. "I'm doomed then." A warmth spread through her chest at the playful exchange. "How's Shanghai?" "Lonely." The simple admission caught her off guard. Before she could respond, another message appeared. "I find myself missing you." Amara's heart raced as she typed, "I miss you too." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared. Finally, "Good night, Amara." She fell asleep with her phone clutched to her chest, confused by how quickly this arranged marriage was becoming something real. The pattern continued. Daily texts evolved into nightly phone calls. James told her about his meetings, the people he met, the city lights. Amara shared stories from Margaret, progress on her designs, the changing colors of the garden. They never discussed the growing intimacy between them, but it was there in the lingering silences, the reluctance to end their calls. "I wish you were here," James admitted on the 12th night, his voice husky with exhaustion and something else. "In Shanghai, anywhere, just with me." Amara closed her eyes, imagining him in some luxury hotel room, tie loosened, hair tousled from running his hands through it, a habit she'd noticed when he was stressed. "I wish that too," she whispered. The confession hung between them, spanning continents. "2 more days," he said finally. "2 more days," she echoed. Neither said what they were both thinking, that something fundamental had changed during their separation, that perhaps what had begun as a business arrangement had become something neither had anticipated. On the 14th day, Amara worked late into the night on her fall collection sketches, determined to distract herself from constantly checking the time until James's expected return the following morning. She must have fallen asleep at her desk because she awoke to the sensation of being lifted, strong arms cradling her against a familiar chest. "James," she murmured sleepily. "Shh, go back to sleep." His voice was tender as he carried her to her bed. "You're early." "I couldn't stay away another day." He laid her gently on the bed, pulling the covers over her. Half asleep, she caught his hand. "Stay." James hesitated, then slipped off his shoes and jacket, sliding in beside her, fully clothed. Amara immediately curled against him, her head finding its place on his chest as if they'd been sleeping like this for years instead of just once. "I missed you," she mumbled against his shirt. "I missed you too. More than I expected. More than makes sense. Nothing about us makes sense." Sleep was pulling her under again. The last thing she felt before drifting off was James's lips against her forehead and his whispered words. Maybe that's what makes it real. Morning light streamed through the curtains Amara had forgotten to close. She stretched languidly, memories of James's return filtering through her consciousness. Had she dreamed it? The indentation on the pillow beside her and the faint scent of his cologne confirmed he'd been there. But where was he now? She found him in the kitchen, making coffee, his suit jacket discarded, shirt sleeves rolled up to expose strong forearms. He looked up when she entered, his eyes warming in a way that made her heart skip. "Good morning." He offered her a steaming mug. "I thought you might need this. You were working late." Amara accepted the coffee, their fingers brushing in a way that sent electricity up her arm. "You carried me to bed. You were sleeping on your sketches. I didn't want to wake you." She sipped her coffee, studying him over the rim. 2 weeks apart had somehow erased months of careful distance. The air between them hummed with possibility. "How was the rest of your trip?" she asked. "Productive." His eyes never left her face. "But something happened while I was away." "Oh." James set down his mug, moving closer until barely inches separated them. "I realized something important." Amara's heart thundered in her chest. "What's that?" His hand came up to cup her cheek, his thumb tracing her lower lip. "This arrangement isn't working anymore." Fear gripped her heart. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said softly, "that I don't want a wife on paper. I want a real marriage with you." Before she could respond, his lips found hers in a kiss unlike any they'd shared before, tender yet passionate, exploring rather than demanding. Mara melted into him, her arms winding around his neck as the kiss deepened. James's hands spanned her waist, lifting her onto the counter to better align their bodies. "I've thought about this every night I was away," he murmured against her lips. "About you, about us." "Me too," she admitted between kisses. James pulled back slightly, his eyes serious. "I want more than our arrangement, Amara, but only if you do." Instead of answering with words, she pulled him back to her, pouring everything she felt into a kiss that left them both breathless. When they finally separated, James rested his forehead against hers. "Is that a yes?" Amara smiled, her heart lighter than it had been in months. "That's a yes." His answering smile was like sunrise breaking through clouds. "Then, Mrs. Carter, may I take you to bed properly this time?" Her laugh turned into a gasp as he lifted her, carrying her toward the stairs with a certainty that left no doubt about his intentions. What had begun as a business arrangement was transforming into something neither had expected, but both now wanted desperately. A real marriage with all the vulnerability and joy that entailed. Chapter 6. Paradise and paranoia sunlight danced across bare skin as Amara stretched languidly in the massive bed. 2 months had passed since James's return from Shanghai, 2 months of rediscovering each other in every sense. Their relationship had transformed entirely, the business arrangement forgotten in favor of passionate nights and tender mornings. James's arm tightened around her waist, pulling her back against his chest. "I can feel you thinking," he murmured, lips brushing the sensitive spot behind her ear. "Just wondering how we got here." She turned in his arms to face him. "From forced marriage to this," his fingers traced lazy patterns on the curve of her hip. "Regrets?" "None." She kissed him softly. "But sometimes it feels like a dream." His smile, once so rare, now freely given, warmed her from within. "I have something for you." He reached into the bedside drawer, withdrawing a small velvet pouch. Inside lay a platinum key on a delicate chain. "What's this?" Amara asked as he fastened it around her neck. "A surprise." James kissed her collarbone where the key rested. "Pack for warm weather. We leave in 2 hours." The helicopter touched down on pristine white sand. Beyond stretched the Caribbean Sea, impossibly blue against the horizon. A private villa nestled among palms was their destination. "Where are we?" Amara asked, breathless with the beauty surrounding them. "My island." James's hand rested comfortably at the small of her back. "Or ours, I should say." "You own an island?" She shouldn't be surprised anymore by his wealth, yet somehow she was. "A small one. This is what your key unlocks, our private paradise." The villa was a masterpiece of open design, glass walls retractable to let sea breezes flow through spacious rooms. 2 nights he'd let himself hope. An infinity pool merged visually with the ocean beyond. 4 days, James said, guiding her through the main living area. No phones, no interruptions, just us. Amara turned into his arms. What did I do to deserve this? His expression sobered. You saw me, Amara, the real me beneath all the armor. No one's done that since my grandmother. She traced the lines of his face, still amazed she could touch him so freely. I'm glad I did. His response was to lift her into his arms, carrying her to the master bedroom, where the afternoon dissolved into tangled sheets and whispered devotions. Paradise, Amara discovered, was waking to gentle kisses trailing down her spine. It was swimming naked in warm waters, making love on the beach at sunset, sharing meals they prepared together. It was James laughing, truly laughing, as she tried and failed to paddleboard and was falling asleep in his arms each night, her head tucked perfectly beneath his chin. On their third evening they sat on the terrace, watching stars appear above the darkening sea, wine glasses in hand. Tell me about your childhood, James said, his fingers absently stroking her arm. Before the arranged marriage, before all of this, Amara sipped her wine, considering. We didn't have much, but there was always love. My mother taught me to sew when I was 6. Little doll clothes at first, then simple garments. Is that when you knew you wanted to design? She nodded. Fashion was my escape. When classmates made comments about my skin color or my second-hand clothes, I'd sketch designs in my notebook and imagine dressing women who looked like me in beautiful things. James's arm tightened around her. Did that happen often? The comments? Often enough. She traced the rim of her glass. Being black in predominantly white spaces means developing thick skin early. I'm sorry. Don't be. It made me stronger, more determined. She turned to look at him. What about you? What was James Carter like before he became a ruthless CEO? A shadow crossed his face. Serious, responsible. After my parents died, I was determined to be worthy of their sacrifice. I grew up too fast. She pressed a kiss to his shoulder. Your grandmother says you never learned to play until you... His smile returned. You make me feel things I'd forgotten were possible. They sat in comfortable silence until James asked, Have you ever been in love before? The question caught her off guard. Once. His name was Liam. We dated. Through college. He was a designer too. What happened? He stole my designs for his senior collection. The memory still stung. Got signed by a major label while I watched from the sidelines. Who? Last I heard, working for some fast fashion brand. She shrugged. Karma, I guess. I would have destroyed him, James said with quiet intensity. Amara laughed softly. My protective husband, always. He kissed her deeply, conversation forgotten, as desire rekindled between them. Their final day in paradise dawned bright and clear. Amara woke alone, a note on James's pillow directing her to the beach. She found him standing ankle-deep in the surf, phone pressed to his ear, expression serious. He ended the call when he saw her, tucking the phone into his pocket with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. Everything okay? She asked, joining him in the water. Just business. He pulled her close, kissing her forehead. Nothing for you to worry about. But throughout the day his phone buzzed repeatedly. Each time James would step away to take the call, returning with increasingly forced smiles and vague explanations. By evening, tension had crept into their paradise. Over dinner, James's phone buzzed again. This time, Amara glimpsed a woman's name on the screen before he turned it over. Vanessa, she questioned, remembering his mention of a potential half-sister. Is that related to what you told me at the hospital about your father's other child? It's complicated, James replied, not meeting her eyes. Uncomplicated for me. Amara set down her fork. Have you found her? Your half-sister? James sighed, running a hand through his hair. Yes. Her name's Vanessa. My investigators located her 3 weeks ago. She's been ill. I've been arranging specialist treatments. Why keep this from me? Amara felt hurt rather than angry. Because it opens old wounds. His voice hardened slightly. My father's betrayal destroyed my mother. She died, never knowing. But I found out after their deaths. His infidelity, his secret child. But none of that is Vanessa's fault, Amara said gently. James's expression softened. No, it's not. That's why I'm trying to help her now. But I'm still processing what it means to have a sister after 32 years as an only child. So these calls, they're about her treatment? He nodded, tension leaving his shoulders. She needs specialized care. I've been arranging it all from a distance. We haven't actually met in person yet. Amara reached across the table, taking his hand. You should have told me. I could have supported you through this. I'm not used to sharing burdens. His thumb traced circles on her palm. I've handled everything alone since I was 20. Not anymore. She squeezed his hand. Whatever comes with Vanessa, with your father's past, we face it together. That's what marriage is, James. Real marriage, not just the arrangement we started with. The gratitude in his eyes made her heart ache. This powerful man still struggled to accept that he deserved support, deserved love. There's more, he said after a moment. Something I should have told you earlier. Amara's stomach tightened. What? Sophia Lee, my former business partner. The blonde woman from the gala. She's been causing problems, threatening to expose aspects of my family history if I don't sell her controlling interest in my company. His jaw tightened. She and I were briefly engaged years ago. A business arrangement, nothing more. When I ended it, she didn't take it well. The revelation sent a chill through Amara. Is she dangerous? Vindictive, certainly. James's expression darkened. She's the reason I've been so preoccupied lately. Between her threats and Vanessa's situation, I've been stretched thin. What does she know that could hurt you? Amara asked, suddenly afraid for him, for them. James was silent for a long moment. My father made some unethical business decisions after my mother died. Nothing illegal, but deeply questionable. When I took over at 20, I spent years cleaning up the mess. Sophia knows details that could damage Carter Industries' reputation. Why didn't you tell me sooner? The hurt in her voice was evident. I wanted to protect you. His eyes met hers, vulnerable and sincere. Your career is taking off. I didn't want it tainted by association with anything negative in my past. That wasn't your decision to make? Amara's tone was firm but gentle. I don't need protection from your past, James. I need honesty, partnership. He looked away, then back at her, something resolving in his expression. You're right. No more secrets, no more protecting you from the truth. Partners face problems together. Relief flooded through her. Thank you. James stood, moving around the table to kneel beside her chair. Taking both her hands in his, he spoke with quiet intensity. I've never had a true partner before, in business or in life. I'm learning as I go, and I'll make mistakes. His thumbs traced her knuckles. But I promise you this. I will always try to be worthy of the trust you've placed in me. Amara leaned down, pressing her forehead against his. That's all I ask. Later that night, as they lay tangled in sheets still damp from passionate reconciliation, James traced the curve of her shoulder with reverent fingers. When we return to New York, he murmured against her skin, I'd like you to meet Vanessa, if you're comfortable with that. Amara turned in his arms, heart full at this gesture of inclusion. I'd like that very much. As moonlight painted silver patterns across their entwined bodies, Amara realized how much their relationship had deepened in these few days. Not despite the tensions and revelations, but because of them. Each layer of honesty, each shared vulnerability, had strengthened what had begun as a cold business arrangement but was now blossoming into something neither had anticipated. True partnership built on passion, trust, and growing love. Chapter 7. Misunderstandings and Revelations. You've been invited to showcase at Fashion Week. Amara looked up from her sketches to find James leaning against the doorframe of her studio, a smile playing at his lips. What? She set down her pencil, certain she'd misheard. He crossed the room, placing an official invitation on her desk. Emerging designer spotlight, 3 months from now. This is impossible. Her fingers traced the embossed lettering. They only select designers with major backing or connections. She stopped abruptly, eyes narrowing. Did you pull strings? I may have mentioned your talent to some people. James's expression was carefully neutral. But they selected your work on merit. I only opened the door. You walked through it on your own. A month ago, she might have been angry at his interference. Now she saw the gesture behind it. His belief in her, his desire to support her dreams. Thank you, she said simply, rising to wrap her arms around his neck. His hand settled naturally at her waist. "You deserve this, Amara. Your designs are extraordinary." Their lips met in a gentle kiss that quickly deepened. Since resolving their misunderstanding about Vanessa, their relationship had entered a new phase of honest intimacy. "I need to start working immediately," she murmured against his mouth. "A collection takes months. You already have one." James gestured to her sketches. "Your City Empress concept, it's ready." Amara pulled back slightly. "How did you know what I named it?" A hint of color touched his cheeks. "I may have looked through your portfolio while you were sleeping." "Creep," she teased, kissing him again. "Your creep," he corrected, lifting her onto the desk. Work was forgotten as passion overtook them. The next 2 months passed in a blur of fabric, fittings, and sleepless nights. Unlike her previous overnight success, this collection demanded blood and tears. Fabrics arrived damaged. The key seamstress quit mid-project. Costs mounted beyond her initial budget. Through it all, James provided steady support without taking over. He connected her with industry veterans who offered practical advice rather than easy solutions. When setbacks left her discouraged, he reminded her of obstacles she'd already overcome. "I can't do this," Amara admitted one night, 3 weeks before the showcase. She stood, surrounded by half-finished garments, her hands shaking with exhaustion. "The collection isn't cohesive. The finishing is rushed. I'm not ready." James knelt before her, taking her trembling hands in his. "Look at me." She met his gaze reluctantly. "This isn't your first challenge, Amara. Remember when your professor told you black designers couldn't succeed in high fashion? When Liam stole your work? When your family nearly lost everything? You've overcome worse odds than technical problems with fabric and timelines. That's different. This is my name, my vision. If I fail, then we try again." He squeezed her hands. "But you won't fail because you're too talented and too stubborn to accept defeat." His faith steadied her. "When did you become my biggest cheerleader?" James smiled, that rare full smile that transformed his face. "When I realized I was falling in love with you." The words hung between them, neither having spoken them before, despite months of increasing closeness. "James," he pressed a finger to her lips. "You don't need to say anything. I just wanted you to know before Fashion Week." But Amara needed to say it, had been feeling it for longer than she cared to admit. "I love you too." The vulnerability in his eyes nearly undid her. This powerful man, who had once seemed so cold, now looked at her as if she held his heart in her hands, which she realized she did. That night they made love with new intensity, each touch a silent promise, each kiss a declaration of feelings too profound for words alone. 2 weeks before Fashion Week, disaster struck. Returning to the studio after a fitting, Amara found the door ajar, lights blazing. Inside, chaos greeted her. Fabric scattered across the floor, dress forms toppled, her collection in shambles. On the wall, written in red marker, "Go back where you came from." Numb with shock, she called James, who arrived within 20 minutes, fury radiating from him as he surveyed the damage. "Security cameras?" he asked, already on the phone with the police. Amara shook her head. The building installation had been scheduled for next week. As officers took statements and collected evidence, reality set in. Weeks of work destroyed, with no time to start over. Her Fashion Week debut was effectively canceled before it began. Back at the mansion that night, Amara moved through the motions of existing, showering, changing clothes, picking at dinner, while grief hollowed her from within. "We'll find who did this," James promised, his anger barely contained. "It doesn't matter." Her voice sounded distant even to her own ears. "The collection is gone. Fashion Week is in 2 weeks. It's over." "It's not over." James's tone was firm. "We'll rebuild. I'll hire security, more seamstresses, whatever you need." Amara shook her head. "There's no time." "Make time." His intensity surprised her. "This wasn't just random vandalism, Amara. Someone targeted you specifically because you're succeeding, because you threatened them." "All the more reason to give up," she said bitterly. "I clearly don't belong in their world." James knelt before her chair, his expression fierce. "Listen to me. That world belongs to you as much as anyone. You've earned your place through talent and perseverance, not privilege or connections." "Pretty words from a man born into wealth," she shot back, hurt making her cruel. Instead of anger, understanding filled his eyes. You're right. I can't fully understand your struggle, but I know what it means to fight for legitimacy in a world that questions your right to exist in it. His sincerity penetrated her despair. I'm sorry, that was unfair. No, it was honest. He took her hands. I can't fix this for you, but I'll stand beside you while you fix it yourself. Something about his phrasing, not offering to solve her problems, but to support her while she solved them herself, rekindled her determination. 2 weeks, she mused, mind already cataloging what could be salvaged, what must be recreated. James smiled. Then we work around the clock. That night became the first of 14 grueling days and sleepless nights. James converted the mansion's ballroom into a temporary studio. Design students from Parsons arrived, friends of friends eager to help an emerging designer in crisis. Supplies appeared as if by magic, though Amara knew James's contacts and resources made it possible. He worked alongside her, learning to cut fabric, to stitch simple seams, whatever was needed. 3 days before the show, as they worked through another night, a visitor arrived. Liam, her ex, the man who had stolen her designs years ago. "What are you doing here?" Amara asked coldly, scissors still in hand. Liam looked uncomfortable. "I heard what happened. Came to see if you needed help. From you?" The irony was too much. "I owe you." His eyes held genuine regret. "For what I did in college, taking credit for your work, it's haunted me. I thought success would feel good. It didn't." Amara studied him, searching for deception. "Why now? Because I saw your preliminary sketches online?" His admiration seemed genuine. "They're brilliant, Amara. The industry needs your voice, not more people like me copying other people's vision." James watched silently from across the room, letting her handle the situation herself. After a moment's consideration, Amara nodded. "We need help with the beadwork on the finale piece." Liam rolled up his sleeves. "Show me." His expertise proved valuable over the next days. Whatever his past sins, his technical skills were undeniable. Working alongside her former betrayer toward a common goal brought Amara unexpected closure. The night before the show, as the rebuilt collection finally took shape, Liam approached her privately. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "A real one, not just showing up to ease my conscience." "I'm listening," Amara continued, pinning a hem. "What I did was unforgivable. I took your talent and claimed it as my own, because I was jealous of your creativity, your vision." His voice held genuine remorse. "I've been designing under your shadow ever since, always knowing my success was built on theft." Amara finally looked up. "Why tell me this now?" "Because seeing you rebuild after disaster, refusing to give up, made me realize what real talent looks like." He glanced toward James, who stood across the room. "And seeing how he supports you without overshadowing you showed me what real partnership looks like." The admission surprised her. "Thank you for the apology, and for your help this week. Will you be okay tomorrow? I mean, the collection is stunning, but after everything that's happened..." "I'll be fine," Amara smiled, surprised to find she meant it. "Some challenges reveal what you're made of." As Liam left, James approached. "Everything okay?" "Better than okay." She leaned into him, exhaustion finally claiming her. "I think I needed that chapter closed properly." James kissed her temple. "One more night, then you conquer the fashion world." She corrected sleepily. "I couldn't have done this without you." "You could have," his voice held absolute certainty, "but I'm glad you didn't have to." Fashion Week arrived in a whirlwind of cameras, celebrities, and industry elite. Backstage was organized chaos as models were sewn into last-minute alterations and makeup artists worked their magic. Amara moved through it all with newfound confidence. The vandalism had shaken her, but rebuilding had made her stronger, more certain of her vision. James stayed close but unobtrusive, handling logistics but never inserting himself into creative decisions. When she glanced his way, minutes before showtime, the pride in his eyes steadied her nerves. "Ready?" he asked. She nodded, suddenly calm. "Ready." The lights dimmed, music pulsed. One by one, Amara's designs moved down the runway, bold colors, innovative cuts. A celebration of the female form in all its diversity. Standing in the wings, she held her breath as the final piece appeared. A spectacular evening gown, inspired by African royalty, worn by a model whose dark skin glowed under the lights. The audience rose in a standing ovation. Tears filled Amara's eyes as James squeezed her hand. "Go," he whispered. "Take your bow." Walking onto that runway felt like stepping into a destiny she'd been working toward her entire life. Flashbulbs exploded. Applause thundered. At the end of the catwalk, she saw Margaret Carter in the front row, clapping proudly beside Vanessa, James's half-sister, who had become a friend over recent months. Family. Somehow, against all odds, she had found family in this arranged marriage. After the show, congratulations poured in from designers, buyers, and press. In the midst of the chaos, Amara searched for James, finding him deep in conversation with a striking older woman. "Amara," he called, beckoning her over. "There's someone I want you to meet. Elizabeth Summers, head of Summers Fashion House." The woman, elegant, imperious, legendary in the industry, extended her hand. "Extraordinary work, Mrs. Carter. I particularly appreciated your use of traditional patterns in modern contexts. Thank you," Amara managed, starstruck. Summers rarely attended shows by new designers. "We should discuss your future," Elizabeth continued. "Perhaps over lunch next week." "My future? Every major designer needs a label. I believe Summers could provide the right infrastructure for your vision." As the implications sank in, Amara sought James's eyes. His expression was carefully neutral, but she could read the pride there. "That's very generous," she began carefully, "but I'd need to think about it." Elizabeth smiled thinly. "Of course. Call my office Monday." After she swept away, Amara turned to James. "Did you arrange that too?" "Absolutely not." He looked genuinely surprised. "Elizabeth Summers doesn't do anyone favors, not even for the right price." "Then why?" "Because you're brilliant," he said simply. "The world is finally seeing what I've known all along." The after-party blurred into a haze of champagne and congratulations. By the time they returned home, dawn was breaking over the city. "I can't believe it's real," Amara said as they entered the mansion, her arms full of flowers from admirers. James watched her with undisguised adoration. "Believe it, this is just the beginning." As she set down the flowers, she noticed an envelope on the side table. "What's this?" "Open it." James's expression was unreadable. Inside was a deed to a converted warehouse in the fashion district. "I don't understand." Amara looked up questioningly. "Your studio?" James's voice was soft, or rather the future home of Amara Carter Design. Emotion welled in her throat. "You bought me a building. I invested in your vision." He took her hands. "Whatever you decide about Summers' offer, you deserve space to create on your own terms." The gesture overwhelmed her, not for its extravagance, but for its understanding of what truly mattered to her. Independence, recognition for her talent, not her marital status. "Thank you," she whispered, tears threatening again. James's thumbs wiped them gently away. "No tears, not tonight. Happy ones," she assured him, rising on tiptoes to kiss him. What began as gratitude quickly ignited into passion. Clothes fell away as they made their way upstairs, celebrating her triumph and their love in the most primal way. Later, wrapped in tangled sheets and each other's arms, Amara marveled at how far they'd come from that cold wedding day. "I never thought I could be this happy," she admitted, tracing patterns on James's chest. He caught her hand, kissing her palm. "Nor I. You've changed everything, Amara." "So have you." She propped herself up to look into his eyes. "We began with a contract, but somewhere along the way, we found love." He pulled her down for another kiss. Outside their window, New York awakened to a new day. But inside their sanctuary, time stood still as two people who had started as strangers discovered that sometimes even the most unlikely beginnings could lead to the most perfect love story. Chapter 8. Meeting the family. "You want me to meet your family?" James's voice held a hint of panic that Amara had never heard before. She looked up from packing her weekend bag, amused by his expression. "They're not ogres, James. Just normal people. Normal people who must hate me for forcing their daughter into marriage," he pointed out, running a hand through his hair, a gesture she now recognized as anxiety. Amara crossed to him, sliding her arms around his waist. "They don't hate you. After all, you saved their home, their business. Through blackmail." His arms encircled her automatically, pulling her closer. "Through negotiation," she corrected, pressing a kiss to his throat. "Besides, that was before." "Before what?" His fingers traced her spine, sending delicious shivers through her body. Before this became real. She tilted her face up, meeting his intense gaze. Before I fell in love with you. The words still felt new on her tongue, though they'd been exchanging them for weeks now. Each time, James's expression softened in a way reserved only for her. He lowered his head, capturing her lips in a kiss that started gentle but quickly blazed into something more urgent. His hand slid lower, cupping her bottom and lifting her against him. "We'll be late," she murmured half-heartedly as his lips trailed fire down her neck. He responded, already unbuttoning her blouse. Worth it. Their passion for each other hadn't dimmed with familiarity. If anything, it had intensified as emotional walls fell away. Each touch carried deeper meaning, each kiss its own declaration. Later, breathless and satisfied, they lay tangled in the sheets of their bed, no longer his or hers, but theirs in every sense. "Now we're definitely going to be late," Amara laughed, glancing at the clock. James traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "I'm not sorry." She kissed him quickly before sliding from bed. "Neither am I, but we should go. Dad's making his famous jollof rice for dinner." James watched her dress, his expression a mixture of satisfaction and apprehension. What if they don't approve of me? The vulnerability in his voice touched her heart. This powerful man, who commanded boardrooms and intimidated CEOs, was nervous about meeting her working-class family. "They'll love you," she assured him, "because I do." The Thompson family home was modest but welcoming, nestled in a neighborhood of similar houses with small, well-tended yards. James gripped Amara's hand tightly as they approached the front door, his other hand holding a bouquet of flowers and an expensive bottle of wine. "Relax," she whispered. "Just be yourself." "The arrogant CEO who forced their daughter to marry him," he murmured back. Before she could respond, the door swung open to reveal her father, tall and dignified despite the apron tied around his waist. "Starlight!" he exclaimed, enfolding Amara in a warm embrace. "Dad," she breathed, inhaling his familiar scent of aftershave and spices. "I've missed you." When they separated, her father turned assessing eyes to James, who stood awkwardly with his offerings. "Mr. Thompson?" James extended his hand formally. "Thank you for inviting me into your home." Instead of taking his hand, her father surprised them both by pulling James into a hug. "Family doesn't shake hands," he declared. "And you're family now." Over her father's shoulder, James's stunned expression made Amara smile. She'd known her generous-hearted father wouldn't hold their unusual beginning against him. Inside, delicious aromas filled the small house. Amara's younger sister squealed with delight upon seeing them, hugging Amara fiercely before subjecting James to a barrage of questions about his life, his business, and his intentions toward her sister. "Zoe," their mother scolded, entering from the kitchen. "Let the man breathe before your interrogation." Mrs. Thompson was a slender woman with Amara's same graceful carriage and bright eyes. She studied James carefully before offering her hand. "So, you're the man who married my daughter without asking my permission," she said, her tone neutral. James swallowed visibly. "Yes, ma'am. A decision I regret making that way, though I'll never regret the result." His sincerity must have registered because her expression softened slightly. "Well, at least you're handsome. My grandchildren will be beautiful." "Mom!" Amara protested, feeling heat rise to her cheeks. But James surprised her by smiling, a genuine, warm smile that transformed his face. They would be, with Amara as their mother. The simple statement, delivered with such conviction, sent a flutter through Amara's heart. They'd never discussed children, yet the image his words conjured felt like a glimpse of a future she suddenly wanted desperately. Dinner was a lively affair, so different from the formal, silent meals that had characterized the early days of their marriage. James gradually relaxed as her family treated him not as a wealthy outsider, but as Amara's chosen partner. After dinner, her father challenged James to a game of chess, the ultimate acceptance in the Thompson household. "Be warned," Amara murmured as they set up the board. "Dad's a chess master. No one's beaten him in years." To everyone's surprise, the game ended in a draw, earning James a nod of genuine respect from her father. "Where did you learn to play like that?" Mr. Thompson asked. "My grandmother taught me," James replied. "She said chess builds character and patience." "Smart woman," her father reset the board. "Rematch tomorrow, before you leave." In the kitchen, helping her mother and sister with dishes, Amara endured their good-natured teasing. From the way he looks at you, I'd say this isn't just business anymore, her mother observed, passing her a plate to dry. It never was for him, Zoe added. The man is completely in love with you. Amara smiled, unable to deny it. Things have changed between us. Good, her mother said firmly. Life's too short for loveless marriages, no matter how convenient. Through the doorway, Amara could see James laughing at something her father said, looking more relaxed than she'd ever seen him in public. The sight filled her with a contentment she'd never imagined possible the day of their arranged wedding. Later that night, they retired to her childhood bedroom, unchanged from her teenage years, walls covered with fashion sketches and magazine clippings. So, this is where little Amara dreamed her big dreams, James said, examining her early designs with genuine interest. Embarrassing, isn't it? She sat on the narrow twin bed, suddenly self-conscious about the room's modest furnishing. Beautiful, he corrected, sitting beside her, like glimpsing the origins of a masterpiece. The tenderness in his voice made her throat tight with emotion. She leaned into him, head resting on his shoulder. "Thank you for coming here," she said softly. "For meeting them. I should have done it sooner." His arm encircled her waist. "They're wonderful, Amara. They raised an extraordinary woman." She turned her face up to his, overwhelmed by love for this complex man who had entered her life as a tyrant and transformed into her champion. Their kiss was sweet, unhurried, mindful of the thin walls and her family's presence nearby, yet even this restrained affection generated heat between them. "I wish we could," James murmured against her lips, his intention clear in the darkening of his eyes. "Later," she promised, "when we're home." Home. The word no longer meant her father wherever she and James were together. "This bed is too small anyway," he sighed dramatically, stretching his long frame to emphasize the point. Amara laughed softly. "Poor spoiled CEO, can't handle roughing it for one night." His smile turned wicked. "I'd gladly rough it if only we were alone." The heat in his gaze sent a familiar warmth spreading through her body. "Behave yourself, Mr. Carter." "Never, Mrs. Carter." He kissed her again, deeper this time, a promise of what awaited their return to privacy. A knock at the door broke them apart. Zoe poked her head in, grinning knowingly at their flushed faces. "Dad made hot chocolate. Family tradition," she announced. "Unless you two are busy, we'll be right there," Amara assured her, straightening her clothes. After Zoe left, James pulled Amara back for one more kiss. "I love your family," he murmured against her lips, "almost as much as I love you." The simple declaration, spoken so naturally now between them, still made her heart soar. The next afternoon, after emotional goodbyes and promises to visit again soon, they drove back toward the city. James had relaxed completely, one hand on the wheel, the other intertwined with Amara's. "Your family is nothing like I expected," he admitted. "They're so normal," she supplied with a smile. "Loving," he corrected. "They actually like each other, want to be together." The observation revealed more about his own childhood than any direct statement could have. Amara squeezed his hand in silent understanding. As they approached the outskirts of the city, James unexpectedly turned onto a side road. "Where are we going?" Amara asked, recognizing nothing in the rural landscape. "One more stop before home." His mysterious smile revealed nothing. The narrow road led to a hilltop overlooking a small lake. James parked and came around to open her door. "I discovered this place years ago," he explained, leading her to a flat rock formation, perfect for sitting. "I come here sometimes to think." The view was breathtaking. Water reflecting the late afternoon sun, trees beginning to show hints of autumn colors, completely private. "It's beautiful," Amara said, leaning into his side as his arm wrapped around her. "So are you." James's voice had deepened, taking on the husky quality that never failed to send shivers down her spine. His kiss was hungry this time, freed from the constraints of her family's home. Amara responded instantly, weeks of intimacy having taught them each other's desires. "Here?" she whispered as his lips trailed fire down her neck. "Here," he confirmed, pulling back to search her eyes. "Unless you'd rather wait." In answer, her hands moved to the buttons of his shirt. "I've been wanting you since last night." The confession ignited something primal in his expression. With gentle urgency, he laid her down on the soft grass beside the rock, his body covering hers. Their lovemaking was both tender and fierce, an affirmation of the profound connection they'd found against all odds. Surrounded by nature's beauty, they came together, as if they were the only two people in the world. Afterward, wrapped in James's suit jacket against the cooling air, Amara watched the sunset paint the sky in vivid colors. "I never imagined it could be like this," she admitted softly. James's arms tightened around her. "Like what?" "This complete?" She turned to face him. "When my father told me about our arrangement, I thought my life was ending. Instead, it was just beginning." The vulnerability in James's expression took her breath away. "You've given me something I never thought I'd have, Amara. A family. A home that feels like one." As darkness fell around them, they remained locked in each other's embrace, two souls who had found their perfect match in the most unlikely circumstances. Their journey back to the city was filled with comfortable silence and occasional touches, hands finding each other, fingertips tracing patterns of affection. This weekend had marked a new chapter in their relationship, no longer defined by their unconventional beginning, but by the deep love that had grown between them against all odds. What had started as force had transformed into the most beautiful choice of Amara's life. Chapter 9: Unexpected Threats. The autumn wind scattered golden leaves across the steps of Amara's new design studio. 8 months had passed since her Fashion Week triumph, and Amara Carter Designs was quickly becoming a name whispered with respect in industry circles. "What do you think?" she asked, watching James examine the renovated warehouse space that would soon host her first independent showcase. "Perfect," he replied, his eyes reflecting pride as they traced the high ceilings, expansive windows, and pristine white walls that would soon display her winter collection. Just like its creator. He pulled her close, lips finding hers with the ease of lovers who knew each other's bodies intimately, yet still discovered new ways to ignite passion with each touch. His hands slid beneath her coat, warm against the thin silk of her blouse. "Someone could walk in," she murmured against his mouth, even as her body arched into his touch. "Let them," he growled, backing her against the wall. "I want the world to see how desperately I love my wife." His possessiveness still thrilled her, so different from the cold business arrangement that had begun their relationship. Now, his desire burned hot and true, matching her own. Later. Straightening her clothes while James wore the satisfied smile that never failed to make her heart race, Amara couldn't believe how completely her life had transformed in less than a year. "Dinner tonight at Nana's?" she asked, checking her watch. Her relationship with Margaret had blossomed into genuine affection, their weekly dinners a cherished tradition. "Vanessa mentioned she might join us if she's feeling up to it," James nodded, expression softening at the mention of his half-sister. Over the past months they had built a cautious relationship, helped by Amara's natural warmth bridging the initial awkwardness. Vanessa's cancer treatments were working, another blessing in a year filled with unexpected joy. 7 o'clock. James kissed her temple. "I need to stop by the office first. Legal wants me to review some contracts." She walked him to the door, where he turned for one more lingering kiss. "I'm proud of you, Amara Carter. Remember that when the critics come tomorrow." His unwavering support had become her foundation as her career soared. No longer did she wonder if doors opened because of her talent or her husband's name. James had made sure she succeeded on her own terms, offering connections but never interference. After he left, Amara lost herself in final preparations for tomorrow's showcase. Her collection celebrated powerful women across cultures, a vision she'd harbored since childhood but only found courage to fully express after finding her own power. The studio door opened behind her. "Forget something?" she called, expecting James's return. "Hello, Amara." The voice froze her blood. Sophia Lee stood in the doorway. James's former business partner and ex-fiancée, a woman Amara had met only once at that fateful gala nearly a year ago. "How did you get in here?" Amara asked, instinctively stepping back. Sophia's smile never reached her cold eyes. "Money opens most doors. We need to talk. I have nothing to say to you." Amara reached for her phone. "I wouldn't do that." Sophia closed the distance between them with predatory grace. "Not if you care about your husband's reputation." Something in her tone made Amara pause. "What are you talking about?" Sophia withdrew an envelope from her designer handbag. "Let's just say James Carter isn't the perfect man you believe him to be. His father left quite a problematic legacy." "If you're talking about his affair and Vanessa, that's old news," Amara replied. "James has reconnected with his half-sister, not the affair." Sophia's laugh was brittle. "The fraud, The money laundering, the sins the son has carefully buried to protect the family name. She slid the envelope across the workbench. Inside were documents. Financial statements, news clippings, court filings, all pointing to criminal activity by James's late father. "This has nothing to do with James," Amara said, though doubt crept into her voice. James had mentioned his father's unethical business decisions, but this looked far more serious. "Doesn't it?" Sophia's perfectly manicured nail tapped one document. "Where do you think his initial capital came from? Clean money doesn't multiply that quickly." Amara's heart raced. "What do you want?" "Simple. I want James back in my life. Back in my company where he belongs." Sophia's expression hardened. "Leave him. File for divorce. Walk away with a generous settlement and your career intact." "You're insane." Amara gathered the documents, shoving them back into the envelope. "I love my husband, and he loves me." "Love?" Sophia scoffed. "James Carter doesn't love anything except power and control. Whatever he's shown you is calculated to keep you compliant. You don't know him." But the seed of doubt had been planted, memories of their cold beginnings surfacing despite months of warmth. "I know him better than anyone." Sophia stepped closer. "We were more than business partners once, before his grandmother interfered." The implication hung between them, poisonous and insinuating. "Get out," Amara whispered, then louder, "Get out!" Sophia smiled coldly. "Think about my offer. 1 week, then these documents go public. Your precious design career will be tainted by association with financial crimes. Is he worth that sacrifice?" After she left, Amara sank into a chair, mind racing. Was this what James had meant by deeply questionable decisions? Had he downplayed the severity? He'd mentioned Sophia's threats, but hadn't specified exactly what she knew. Her phone chimed with a text from him. "Missing you already. Can't wait for tonight." The simple message, so at odds with Sophia's portrait of a calculating manipulator, steadied her resolve. She needed to hear his side before jumping to conclusions. But at Margaret's dinner, James seemed distracted, checking his phone frequently, tension evident in the set of his shoulders. When Amara asked what was wrong, his answer was vague. "Just business," the same evasion that had caused their rift on the island. Vanessa noticed the tension, raising an eyebrow at Amara when James stepped outside to take a call. "Trouble in paradise?" she asked quietly. Amara hesitated, then confided, "Sophia Lee came to see me today." Vanessa's expression darkened. That woman never gives up. "What did she want? For me to leave James?" Amara glanced toward the door where James had disappeared. "She showed me documents about your father's business practices." "Ah." Vanessa's eyes held understanding. "And now you're wondering if James has been hiding the full truth?" "Should I be?" Vanessa sipped her wine thoughtfully. "James has carried the weight of our father's mistakes for years, cleaned up messes he didn't make. It wasn't just unethical decisions. It was fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. When James took over at 20, the company was built on corrupt foundations." Amara's stomach tightened. "Did he know? Was he involved?" "God, no." Vanessa seemed genuinely surprised by the question. "He was devastated when he discovered the truth, spent years making restitution, secretly, restructuring everything legitimately. Few people know how close Carter Industries came to collapsing during that time. Then why is Sophia threatening him now, after all this time? Because Sophia Lee doesn't accept rejection in business or love." Vanessa's voice hardened. "She wants what James has, always has." Later that night, unable to sleep, Amara watched James toss restlessly beside her. Should she confront him about Sophia's visit, demand the full truth about his father's crimes? The next morning, Amara woke to an empty bed and a note. "Early meeting. See you at the showcase." "Oh, my love." Jay Doubt nodded her as she prepared for her big day. The showcase would begin at 7, with press, buyers, and influencers gathering to view her collection. At 6, her phone rang. An unknown number. "Mrs. Carter, this is Simon from reception. There's a Miss Lee here to see your husband." "My husband isn't here," Amara replied, confused. "He just arrived 5 minutes ago, ma'am. Shall I send Miss Lee up?" A cold hand clutched Amara's heart. James was here, meeting Sophia secretly. "No," she managed. "I'll come down." The elevator ride felt eternal. When the doors opened, she saw them immediately. James and Sophia, heads close together in intense conversation near the entrance. Sophia noticed her first, a triumphant smile crossing her face as she deliberately placed a hand on James's arm. "Amara!" James's expression was complicated: surprise, guilt, and something that looked like fear. "I can explain." "I'm sure you can," Amara replied, ice in her veins despite the fire in her heart. "Just like you explained your business meetings with her before." Sophia's smile widened. "I told you he wasn't being honest, darling." "Stop." James's voice cut like steel. "This isn't what it looks like, Amara." "Then what is it?" Amara demanded, aware of curious eyes watching their drama unfold. "More secrets? More things that don't concern me?" James ran a hand through his hair, that nervous gesture she'd come to love. "Sophia contacted me, said she had documents about my father that could damage both our reputations. I know. She showed them to me yesterday." Shock registered on his face. "Yesterday? Why didn't you tell me?" "I was going to, after you explained why you've been so distracted, checking your phone, disappearing for early meetings." The hurt in her voice was unmistakable. Understanding dawned in James's eyes. "You thought I was having an affair with her." Sophia stepped between them. "Don't listen to him, Amara. He's been meeting me for weeks. To negotiate buying your silence," James snapped, "because you threatened to expose my father's crimes if I didn't sell you controlling interest in Carter Industries." Amara looked between them, struggling to discern truth from manipulation. Across the floor. "Your father's crimes. Why didn't you tell me how serious they were? You made it sound like minor ethical lapses." Pain flashed across James's face. "I was ashamed. After my mother died, my father made terrible choices. Fraud, embezzlement, money laundering. When I took over at 20, I spent years making it right, returning funds, restructuring the company legitimately. I didn't want you to think less of me for what he'd done." "Yet you hid this from me," Amara said quietly, "just like you hid Sophia's threats. To protect you," he stepped closer, desperation in his eyes. "Carrie, your career is taking off. I didn't want it tainted by my father's mistakes." Sophia laughed coldly. "How noble!" "Tell her the rest, James. About us." James's jaw tightened. "There is no us, Sophia. There never really was." "Liar!" Sophia's composed facade cracked. "We were engaged before your grandmother interfered. She forced you to break it off, claimed I wasn't suitable." Amara's world tilted on its axis. "You were engaged?" "Briefly, 7 years ago." James's eyes never left Amara's. "It was a business arrangement, nothing more. I ended it when I realized she wanted my company, not me." "You've made quite a specialty of business arrangement marriages," Amara said, the hurt making her cruel. James flinched as if struck. "Our beginning doesn't define us, Amara. What we've become, what we feel for each other. That's real." Sophia sneered. "How touching. I wonder if you'll feel the same when these documents go public tomorrow, when your precious fashion career collides with financial scandal." Something shifted in Amara's heart, clarity cutting through confusion. Whatever James's past contained, whatever mistakes he'd made in hiding it, one thing was certain: Sophia was manipulating them both. She stepped forward, standing beside James. "Release whatever you want, Sophia. We'll face it together." The united front clearly caught Sophia off guard. "You'd risk everything for him? Your reputation, your career? For my husband?" "Yes." Amara's hand found James's, fingers intertwining. "That's what love means. Standing together even when it's difficult." James's grip tightened, his voice thick with emotion. "Amara?" "No more secrets," she interrupted. "No more protecting me from the truth. Partners face problems together." Sophia's composure crumbled entirely. "You're both fools. When this hits the press, it won't matter," James cut in, "because I've already contacted the authorities with full disclosure of my father's actions and my subsequent restitution." He turned to Amara. "That's where I was this morning, finalizing legal immunity for cooperating." Sophia paled. "You're bluffing." James's smile was cold. "Try me. Release those documents and the only person facing charges will be you for blackmail and extortion." For a moment, Sophia looked ready to explode with rage. Then, smoothing her expression with visible effort, she straightened her jacket. "This isn't over," she promised, before turning on her heel and stalking toward the exit. When she was gone, Amara released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. Is it true about the authorities? James nodded. I should have done it years ago. Should have told you everything from the beginning. Yes, you should have. She met his gaze directly. No more compartmentalizing your life, James. No more shutting me out to protect me. I promise. His forehead pressed against hers. No more secrets, ever. The intimacy of the gesture, so vulnerable in such a public place, melted the last of her anger. We should get upstairs. The showcase starts in 40 minutes, James smiled. That rare, full smile that transformed his face. Lead the way, Mrs. Carter. I believe we have a collection to present. Hand in hand, they walked toward the elevator, the crisis not forgotten, but weathered together the way real partners faced life's challenges. That night, after the showcase's resounding success, they made love with renewed passion, each touch an apology, each kiss a promise of transparency and trust. I thought I might lose you today, James whispered against her skin. When I saw your face downstairs, Amara silenced him with her lips. You won't lose me. Not to Sophia, not to your past. I don't deserve you. His voice broke with emotion as he moved above her. Yes, you do, she breathed, arching to meet him. We deserve each other, the good and the bad, the past and the future. As they reached the peak of pleasure together, Amara knew they had crossed another threshold in their relationship. From passion to partnership, from romance to resilience. But begun as force had become choice and now had transformed into something unbreakable. A love tested by fire and found genuine. Chapter 10, From Arrangement to Forever. 1 year to the day after their arranged wedding, Amara stood in the master bathroom of the mansion, staring at the small plastic test in her trembling hands. 2 pink lines stared back at her, unmistakable in their meaning. She was pregnant. Emotions flooded through her, joy, fear, wonder, and above all, an overwhelming love that brought tears to her eyes. A baby. Their baby. The past year had transformed her life completely. After the confrontation with Sophia, James had kept his promise of total transparency, sharing even the darkest chapters of his family history. The process had been painful but healing, bringing them closer than ever before. Her fashion line had flourished, garnering international acclaim. James had watched proudly from the sidelines, supporting without interfering, celebrating her success as fervently as his own. Now this, the most unexpected blessing of all. Taking a deep breath, Amara slipped the test into her pocket. Tonight was their anniversary dinner, a private celebration at home, the perfect moment to share this life-changing news. James arrived home earlier than expected, finding Amara in their bedroom, putting finishing touches on her makeup. You're breathtaking, he said, leaning against the doorframe, his eyes drinking her in. She wore a sapphire dress of her own design, the silk clinging to her curves in a way that still made his breath catch after a year of marriage. You're not so bad yourself, she teased, taking in his tailored suit. Crossing to him, she adjusted his tie, a gesture that had become habit, intimate in its domesticity. His hands settled at her waist, drawing her closer. Happy anniversary, wife. Happy anniversary, husband. The words, once cold and contractual, now carried the warmth of genuine love. His lips found hers in a kiss that began gentle but quickly deepened, his hand sliding down to cup her bottom and press her against him. Dinner will get cold, she murmured half-heartedly as his mouth traced a burning path down her neck. I don't care about dinner, he growled, already sliding the zipper of her dress down. I want you. A year of passion had taught them each other's bodies completely, yet desire between them burned hotter than ever. They made love with the urgency of new lovers and the intimacy of soulmates, each touch a testament to the journey that had brought them here. Afterward, lying tangled in sheets and each other, James traced patterns on the bare skin of her back. I have something for you, he said, reaching into the bedside drawer. The velvet box held a platinum band studded with diamonds and emeralds, a perfect match to her wedding ring. It's beautiful, she breathed as he slipped it onto her finger above her wedding band. But what's the occasion, besides our anniversary? James's expression grew serious, his eyes holding hers with unguarded emotion. A year ago we married as strangers, fulfilling a contract. Today I want to ask you to be my wife again, this time with love, not obligation. Tears pricked Amara's eyes. James, you transformed me, Amara. You saw past the cold businessman to the man beneath. His fingers intertwined with hers. I want to renew our vows, not as a business arrangement, but as a choice, my choice. To love you every day for the rest of our lives. Joy bubbled through her veins. This was the perfect opening for her own news. "I'd like that," she whispered, bringing his hand to rest on her still flat stomach. "Especially since our family is growing." Confusion crossed his face, then dawning comprehension as her meaning registered. "You're pregnant," he said, wonder illuminating his features. "We're having a baby," she confirmed. James's control shattered completely, tears filling his eyes as he gathered her into his arms. "A baby," he repeated, voice thick with emotion. "Our baby." His hands cradled her face with infinite tenderness. "I love you, Amarakata, beyond reason, beyond measure. I love you too." Her heart felt too full for her chest. "All of you, the good, the bad, the man you were when we met and the man you've become." They made love again, slower this time, reverent, celebrating not just their anniversary, but the new life they'd created together. 3 months later, they renewed their vows on a pristine Caribbean beach, the same island where they'd first acknowledged their feelings. This time, the ceremony reflected their true relationship, not the cold business arrangement of their first wedding. Amara glowed in a flowing white gown that subtly accommodated her growing belly. James couldn't take his eyes off her as she walked toward him across the sand, her father proudly at her side. Margaret Carter sat in the front row, beaming with happiness, her health fully restored. Beside her sat Vanessa, James's half-sister, holding Margaret's hand. The family they'd created surrounded them, Amara's parents and sister, James's reconnected relatives, friends who had witnessed their journey from arrangement to authentic love. When they exchanged vows, James spoke from the heart without notes or preparation. "Amara, when you came into my life, I saw you as a solution to a problem, the perfect wife on paper. I never imagined you would become essential to me, as necessary as breathing." His voice wavered with emotion. "You broke through walls I spent a lifetime building. You saw the man I could be before I believed he existed." He placed his hand gently on her rounded belly. "You've given me what I never thought I deserved: love, forgiveness, family. Today I choose you again, not from obligation, but with my whole heart, forever." Tears streamed down Amara's face as she spoke her own vows. "James, we began as strangers bound by contract. I resented you, fought you, and then, against all odds, fell completely in love with you." She smiled through her tears. "You transformed from the arrogant CEO who purchased a wife to the compassionate man who earned my heart. Today, I choose you again, as my husband, my partner, the father of our child, my love for all our days." Their kiss sealed promises made not with ink on paper, but with hearts fully surrendered. At the reception, James surprised everyone by leading Amara onto the dance floor for their first dance. Not a formal waltz like their initial wedding, but a close, intimate embrace as Ed Sheeran's Perfect played softly. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" he murmured against her temple as they swayed together. "Never," she admitted, nestling closer. "I was determined to hate you forever." His laugh rumbled through his chest. "You did a terrible job of it. Thankfully," she tilted her face up to his, "some failures are blessings in disguise." As the sun set over the ocean, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, James drew Amara away from the celebration to a quiet spot on the beach. "I have something for you," he said, producing a small, wrapped package. Inside was a leather-bound journal. Opening it, Amara found the first entry, written in James' precise handwriting. "To our child. This is the story of how your mother saved me. How a marriage that began as a business arrangement transformed into the greatest love story I never deserved but will spend my lifetime cherishing. Your mother is the strongest, most beautiful soul I've ever known. She taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, but the greatest strength. Because of her, you will know a father capable of love, not just success. May you inherit her courage, her compassion, her uncompromising spirit. And may you know every day of your life that you were born from love that defied all expectations, including our own. With eternal gratitude and love, your father." Tears blurred Amara's vision as she closed the journal, too moved for words. James's arms encircled her from behind, his hands resting protectively over their growing child. "For the next chapters," he whispered against her hair, "our family story is just beginning." Amara turned in his embrace, heart overflowing with love for this complex, passionate man who had entered her life as a tyrant and become her soulmate. "I used to dream of designing beautiful things," she said softly. "I never imagined my greatest creation would be this life we've built together." Their lips met as the first stars appeared above them, a kiss that contained their past, celebrated their present, and promised their future. 5 years later, Amara stood in the wings of Paris Fashion Week, watching as her latest collection received a standing ovation. In the front row sat James, their 4-year-old daughter, Lila, perched on his lap, clapping enthusiastically for her mother. Beside them, Margaret cradled their 6-month-old son, Noah, named for Amara's father, who had passed away the previous year. As Amara took her bow, her eyes locked with James's across the crowded runway. In that moment, surrounded by the success she'd earned and the family they'd created, she marveled at the journey that had brought them here. What had begun with a contract signed in cold deliberation had blossomed into passion, partnership, and profound love. Their arrangement had become choice, and that choice had given them everything. Later that night, after the children were asleep in their suite, James pulled Amara onto the balcony overlooking the Paris skyline. "Proud of you," he murmured, nuzzling her neck. "Always proud of you." She leaned back against his chest, his arms secure around her waist. "We've come a long way from that first meeting in your study." His lips found that sensitive spot behind her ear. "When you called our arrangement extortion." "When you said I'd do nicely," she countered, turning in his arms. His smile, once so rare, now freely given, warmed her from within. The understatement of the century. "You didn't do nicely, you transformed my entire existence." "Quite the accomplishment for a little fashion hobby," she teased, quoting his dismissive early assessment. James winced dramatically. "Will I never live down my initial arrogance?" "Never." She traced the beloved contours of his face. "It makes our story more interesting." His expression grew serious, his eyes holding hers with the same intensity that still made her heart race. "I love you, Amara Carter. More today than yesterday, less than tomorrow." "I love you too." The words, spoken thousands of times over their years together, retained their power. "All of you, exactly as you are." As his lips claimed hers in a kiss that promised passion, undiminished by time, Amara surrendered to the beautiful truth of their journey. The CEO, who had once purchased a wife, had ultimately won her heart, not through force or arrangement, but by becoming a man worthy of genuine love. And the woman who had entered marriage as a financial transaction had discovered that sometimes the most beautiful designs emerge from the most unlikely beginnings. Their story, from forced arrangement to desperate chase to profound partnership, was living proof that love finds its own path, often through the very obstacles meant to prevent it.